Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's the show where me and John talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. And today we're going to be talking about Daniel Bryan. What a wonderful man he is. In my opinion, I think he's the best wrestler in the world today.
I would say possibly the best wrestler in the world for the last 20 years or so.
Yes, I think that's pretty fair. I think he's so good, unbelievably good, deceptively good. You wouldn't look at that guy and think he's the best wrestler in the world, but I would say that that's the truth. As true as one man's opinion could possibly be.
Yes,
I suppose. And he had neck problems a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
When did he retire because of those neck problems? Was it 2016?
Initially the neck problems came in 2014, right around or just after WrestleMania 30. But those weren't the issues which caused him to retire. I believe he managed to get surgery and come back from those neck issues, and made a brief run again, which kind of culminated at the next year's WrestleMania, where he won the Intercontinental title in a ladder match. But then right after that, that's when he started having concussion related issues, where I think he was like having seizures and stuff and pretty much getting concussion symptoms after every match. He kind of had this going on and was sent to a bunch of, neurologists and concussion experts. And they basically all said the same thing, that he needed to retire. And that was made official in February 2016.
Okay, and it seemed like one of those injuries that you might not be able to recover from. It looked pretty bad from what we all heard. And we all thought, hey, happened to Edge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's happened to Daniel Bryan. It's a shame, but we got some really good years. Daniel Bryan entertained us for a long time. So we're like, hey, at least we got that. And then a couple of years went by. And then Daniel Bryan came back.
Yeah.
When did he come back? 2018 or 19?
2019, I want to... No, it was 2018, yeah.
And we were all very excited. We're like, wow, I can't believe this guy made a recovery. That's incredible. And when he came back, again, he was just off the charts. So good.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful to watch. And that kind of brings us full circle over to this year. At the beginning of the year, we had the Royal Rumble where Edge came back. Nobody thought Edge would ever come back, but Daniel Bryan did it. And it turns out Edge did it too. Came back for one last run. And he won the Royal Rumble and looked set to go to WrestleMania to fight Roman Reigns. Then Daniel Bryan somehow weaved his way into the storyline. And it made sense to have a triple threat match at WrestleMania between Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman Reigns, all three of whom have suffered illnesses and have come back from them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I don't think they really talked about in the build-up to that match. I can see why it's a bit serious,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's also something to take note of. That's quite an inspiring main event when you think about it like that. All three of these guys really, went through some hardships and came back and main evented WrestleMania. A pretty decent match as well. So that's quite impressive. But after WrestleMania, we kind of heard rumors. I think he did an interview. Daniel Bryan did an interview. Do you have the interview?
Yeah. Well, I've got a few notes from it where he basically said that he felt a bit detached from the match, like he couldn't really enjoy it as much as he thought he would have, considering, it's a WrestleMania main event, the first time that they've wrestled in front of fans for, over a year. But he didn't really find it very fulfilling, or inspiring, I guess, and it was almost the way he talked about it. It was almost like a out of body experience. Him like going out there, feeling this weird feeling where he just felt like he couldn't enjoy it.
Now that's very interesting whenever you think about Daniel Bryan, the person, because he always seemed like he loved wrestling. His entire thing, that was just his thing, is he loved wrestling. Whenever he was told by the WWE that he had to retire and he wasn't able to wrestle any longer, I had heard that he was still interested in maybe wrestling on the independents and things like that, saying that if the WWE doctors didn't clear me, I'm sure I could find a doctor who would clear me, allow me to go back and wrestle on the independents, which is just, shows you how much he loves wrestling. He just loves it. He can't stop. And it's interesting that maybe a year or two after, well, a couple of years after, he said those kind of things, he's now talking about not being interested in the main event at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Which is huge, which is all some people want, is to be in the main event at WrestleMania. And you know that something must be going wrong for that guy who loves wrestling so much, where he's in the main event at WrestleMania for the second time, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's in there with Edge and Roman Reigns, two incredibly good opponents for him, and it's not inspiring him, and it's not really grabbing him the way it used to. So that's really interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit disconcerting as well, considering, like you say, like the journey he's been through to get cleared and come back to wrestling and kind of go back to living his dream again, which, was taken away from him so suddenly. And then to be here like 3 years later and it's almost become like a chore to him again. It's not really what you want to hear from a guy who's obviously been really passionate about wrestling, like his whole career. Like, even as long ago as like at the start of the year, he was saying how he planned to never retire again after coming back from what he went through, and was like saying he wanted to wrestle into his 60s and 70s, like Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk and Johnny Saint. But to like say that and then say, WrestleMania wasn't fulfilling for him, almost sounds like it's the WWE machine, which is the problem here, which is kind of, sapped his motivation, I guess. And with his contract coming up very, very soon, by all accounts, it could be a case that this is the last we'll see of Daniel Bryan in WWE.
Possibly. There could be a couple of things behind him saying what he said after and feeling what he felt after WrestleMania. It could be that you are correct and that the WWE machine itself has just worn him down and he's had enough, and that's possible. It's a very demanding schedule. There's a lot of shit you have to do to get ahead in that business, I'm sure a lot of that probably takes its toll on him, and he probably prefers things being a little bit more low-key. That could definitely be a factor. I think there's a possibility that he is talking about wrestling itself, in that, he's looking out at people for the first time in ages, and he's in the main event at WrestleMania, and it doesn't feel right. And maybe that's just because nothing lasts forever. Not even cold November rain. That's what they say. And, sometimes you get really invested in a thing so much that after a while you need to take a step back and or else you just get sick of it, So perhaps that's the thing. Also, Daniel Bryan is a bit of a trickster. So he could have just said that as a joke. Not a very good joke. But yeah, his sense of humor, very interesting, I don't know, man. When is his contract up? Over the summer?
We don't know officially, but he's talked about it coming up very, very soon. So, it could be even sooner than that.
Okay, so there's a match on SmackDown this week,
Yes.
tomorrow, as
Uh,
of the posting of
yes.
this podcast, between Daniel Bryan and somebody else.
Roman Reigns.
Oh, that
So
guy?
yeah, it's for the Universal title. So
Oh.
if Daniel Bryan wins, he's the Universal Champion. But if he loses, then he's banished from SmackDown. Is the official wording?
Banished. That makes it sound so medieval,
Yeah.
doesn't it? You're banished from this land, but Raw you can totally go to. So again, that in itself leads it to different possibilities. Like they could say you're being banished from SmackDown, but you're still free to go to Raw, or you're still free to go to NXT, or pop up in any of the other little random shows that they have, or it could mean you're just done.
Yeah.
Again, this seems like, or it could just be him taking some time off, because they do that kind of crap all the time. Loser leaves town match. Loser is definitely fired 100% for real this time. And 6 weeks later, that guy, well, in the WWE's case, it's like a week later, the
Yeah.
guy's back on TV.
Well, last week Charlotte Flair got suspended indefinitely, and this week she was back already. So.
But that's it. Suspended indefinitely means at the time of the suspension, they weren't sure when she would come back. And they're like, a week will do. You're suspended from this week where you wouldn't have been on TV anyway.
Yeah.
Lucky you. Okay. Here's a suggestion for you. The ratings for SmackDown recently probably not been through the roof.
I think they've been fairly solid. Like they definitely picked up sort of last year when they started doing shows from the Thunderdome, and Roman Reigns came back, and I think they've been fairly solid since then as well.
So do you think, you probably don't then think that a title match like this on free TV is an excuse to bump some ratings? You think it's more of a storyline?
Yeah, I think if anything, my line of thinking is if Daniel Bryan's contract is coming up soon, this is a way to write him off TV, but also in a way which helps position Cesaro as Roman Reigns' new challenger after this. Because Cesaro, since WrestleMania, has kind of stepped up and said he wants a title shot. Reigns has kind of blown him off and said, nah, you're not worthy. So what better way to add a bit of heat to the fire there, but than by having Cesaro's friend Daniel Bryan lose his job because of Roman Reigns and Jey Uso doing some dastardly cheating, as they tend to do, and screwing Daniel Bryan over.
They do happen to be dastardly heels quite a lot, don't they?
Yes.
They're always up to that. I gotta say, if that is the angle they're going down, I really like that. That whole Cesaro angle, that's good. I really like that. And God knows we haven't said, boy, I really like this angle when it comes to the WWE in a long time. But that's how you do it. That's how you build up Cesaro.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, if they do a big long angle and Cesaro doesn't win the belt, then come back to this show and point that out to me. Would be pretty typical of them. So I really like the idea of that Cesaro versus Roman Reigns. I think that would be a really logical way to build up Cesaro against Roman Reigns, and it would be a fun match and a good way to cement Cesaro as legitimately one of the best, which he is. Before that, though, I was really thinking there's still a possibility of a title switch, which I suppose is exactly what they want from people. They want people to feel like that. If there's now that we've discussed it, it does make an awful lot of sense for it just to be a storyline business to write Daniel Bryan off. But what if he did? What if he won?
Well, that's the magic of Daniel Bryan, though, isn't it? Because he makes you believe. because he's got a history of being this underdog who's overperformed and done things that, technically speaking, you wouldn't have expected him to do in WWE because of his size and his look and everything like that. Like, he was never supposed to headline WrestleMania 30 back in the day, but the fan support kind of changed whatever plans they had, and it was arguably one of the best moments in WrestleMania history when he main evented and won the title.
But don't you think that Daniel Bryan versus Cesaro would be pretty fucking sweet?
No, without a doubt.
With Daniel Bryan as a heel, like imagine, Roman Reigns is this big heel, and Daniel Bryan is the one to finally vanquish him, and Daniel Bryan's like, yes, I did it all by myself, and does the classic old, because I know he can do that kind of shit. We've seen him as a heel, and that man is, unsurprisingly, incredibly good at it.
Mm-hmm.
He's just really good at like fucking annoying people. So he could easily spin that into a Weasley heel character and play a setup against Cesaro. That would be cool. Of course, this is all wishful thinking. Whereas we've discussed, I feel like it's almost a certainty that Roman Reigns is going to win to have that Roman versus Cesaro match, which again, makes sense and would do a lot for Cesaro. So I dig that. And, maybe it is just Daniel Bryan taking a few weeks off or a month or two off, before SummerSlam, for example. He might come back in time to do a big angle and work something out there. Maybe he just needs some time off, like we said. He just needs a little bit of time off to kind of cool his head and think about it, because he's still been on TV and he's still been working, like, but here he's like working kind of creatively and backstage and stuff like that. So, and some agents have talked about how they just really love being agents.
Yeah.
They love putting that shit together, and they love like teaching people how to work and all this stuff. And Daniel Bryan could do that better than anybody.
He could, but again, I'm not sure if he wants to give up being in the ring just yet. I think the schedule more than anything is what's ground him down, and maybe some of the creative as well on top of that, and having to repeatedly bang his head trying to get good storylines and feuds and whatnot. So it's hard to say, really. But what would you think if Daniel Bryan did decide he's had enough of WWE and wanted to go out and test pastures new and see what else is out there?
Well, I wouldn't be too surprised. Like we've said before, he does seem to really love working the independents, and he probably misses that kind of thing. I feel like if his contract is coming up pretty soon, then he made a smart decision right now by being on the fence, because, like you said, the schedule in the WWE is very grueling, very, very hands-on, very all the time on tour, and, time to time and stuff like this. Now, of course, they're not doing that because of the pandemic at the moment, but they're going to be starting that stuff up soon. I imagine after SummerSlam, they're going to be starting up stuff. So if his contract's coming up now, it gives him the perfect vantage point to stop and see whether or not that schedule is about to overwhelm him, because right now he's okay, but in a couple of months' time, if they start that up again, he's going to be back on the road, and he's going to be busy. And maybe that's part of the thing, because they haven't been touring and doing a lot of that stuff for so long that Daniel Bryan maybe feels he's going through the motions because he hasn't really gone anywhere or done anything, right? The fun part of being a pro wrestler is you can go across the world and entertain people and go everywhere. Every single part of the United States is covered. They can go literally anywhere. And to not do that for a year, even if you see fans coming in, you're still in Florida. You haven't left Florida for a whole year. So it's possible that he just misses the variety of being somewhere else, and while the WWE can provide that, his standing on the independents would also provide that. So if he were to step away right now, he would have the luxury of being able to travel across the world and perform at independent wrestling events anywhere he wants at his own leisure, on his own time, doing what he wants to do, and picking whatever spots he thinks are the best for him and his character. So the idea of him leaving to go back to the independents, I can understand. I can see that. I think that is a possibility for sure. Now the trick is whether or not he wants to work for another company.
Yeah.
That's what I think the trick is. I think that Daniel Bryan by now is at the point in his career where he doesn't have to. He doesn't need to. You know, he's won everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's made a shit ton of money from the WWE, right? I'm sure that guy saved an awful lot of his money. He's not, he's not Mr. Moneybags over there, spending everything. He's not the monopoly man. I can see that guy being quite smart with his money.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't need the allure or the attention or anything that a lot of the major TV companies could provide him with. The thing that would be the real turning point is the talent he would be able to work with. The TV time isn't important, but working with a new audience that he hasn't worked with before, that's a possibility. So, in my opinion, I feel like he wouldn't go for one of the big companies right now. He would probably go onto the independents where he would have more freedom to do whatever he wanted with the kind of people he would want to wrestle.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I think you bring up a really good point there. Like, let's not forget he's been with WWE now for, since 2009, I think he originally signed. So he's wrestled all of the guys there pretty much a hell of a lot. So maybe the idea of going out and wrestling against some of the other talent that's out there who he's not had the chance to wrestle, or at least wrestle recently, that could be like a big temptation for him. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's something he wants to do, if he really does want to keep wrestling after, if there is life after WWE. But I think as well, like, because he's kind of talked about in an ideal world, being able to go to different companies and WWE and kind of have the best of all worlds, really, and face whoever he wants to face and go on whatever show he wants to go on. And obviously, that's probably not going to happen, at least not in terms of including WWE in the equation as well. But with this whole AEW Impact crossover, you could see him like wrestling in both of those companies at the same time if he wanted to, just being like a journeyman kind of veteran going around to have good matches with people and try and win titles in whatever company. So yeah, I mean, something like that would be pretty unique and pretty cool if he could pull it off. But whether you can in today's day and age, I really don't know.
No, I don't think it'll work. I mean, Kenny Omega seems to be the journeyman these days, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? It'll just lead to a Kenny Omega versus Daniel Bryan match, which will be pretty good, but not as good as we think it's going to be.
Yeah, most likely.
And I feel like that's just not good for business if your business is yourself as a wrestler. Okay, before we think too much about him leaving, let me ask you this: on the WWE right now, on their roster across all of their different brands and promotions and whatever the fuck, who would you like to see Daniel Bryan wrestle that he hasn't wrestled already?
Pete Dunne is the first one that came to my mind.
Yes.
Because, I think they've got a very similar style, which you can definitely see whenever Pete Dunne wrestles. You can see the Daniel Bryan influence in a lot of the stuff he does.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see how they matched up against each other. And even then, like other guys on the NXT roster as well. Like, you could have a great match with Daniel Bryan and Adam Cole. I mean, I'm pretty sure they've had matches in the past, years and years ago, but where they are now as wrestlers, you can imagine it'd be pretty phenomenal. Same with Kyle O'Reilly as well. And I'm sure there's loads of others in NXT. Finn Balor. There's a match I don't think we ever got to see in WWE is Finn Balor versus Daniel Bryan. So there's options. I mean, if he wanted to go to NXT, that would be pretty cool if you ask me.
Exactly, and it did an awful lot for Finn Balor because God bless him, Finn Balor didn't really do a whole lot on the main roster. He was kind of floundering around, and
Mm,
once he went back to NXT, he was like a house on fire. That guy was in great matches every single show,
yeah.
and they strapped a rocket to him and he fucking flew. He knew exactly what he was doing and he did it well. And maybe it was just that change of atmosphere that he needed. So Daniel Bryan going down there, even for a couple of months, and just working shit with Tommaso Ciampa. Hello, yes, please. I mean, Daniel Bryan versus Walter.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, boy. Like that shit would be amazing. So,
It's
like,
got
if
shades of what was his name? Takeshi Morishima from Ring of Honor.
I haven't seen that.
Oh man, those matches were hard hitting and brutal, and I think that's where Daniel Bryan had like a detached retina because he was
Oh,
hit so hard.
oh dear. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to check that out. Excellent. Daniel Bryan wrestled Lance Storm, didn't he?
Yes, he did in Ring of Honor. Yeah,
That I gotta check out.
it was a really good match.
Of course it would be. Look at those two fucking guys, you know? But that's the thing about Daniel Bryan, like we've said. He can work with anybody. Like we're talking about him against Walter. We've seen what he did with Brock Lesnar, which was great, right? But you look at people like Lance Storm, who would be more his size, works great with those people too.
Yeah.
He can do anything. He's a wonderful, wonderful wrestler. Okay, so that would be nice if he went to NXT and took a little tour down there. However, what if he just loses this match on Friday on SmackDown and really does take a step back?
Mm.
Do you think what roster or what people on the independents do you think he would go out and have the best match with, or who he would want to fight?
Oh, that's a good question.
Now that Samoa Joe's off the table in WWE, I would very much love to see another match between those two guys.
Yeah.
I have said this before, but I feel like Samoa Joe would be really good in Ring of Honor. I think he would just be the perfect like keystone for that company. And if they did a special like one-off not CM Punk, although, yeah, dude, CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan. I know they've done that before, but that shit was amazing. So let's have some more. But if they did again, if you're in the independents, Punk and Bryan don't need to do it, but they might want to do it. And it's not happening in the WWE, but it might happen on the independents if Daniel Bryan's released, So, like, if Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe they had a one-off match, right? They built it up like this is a match that hasn't happened in 20 years. Here we go. We're going to have a good one. And then just do a one-off match. People will want to see it.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be tied down to contracts. But I guarantee you, people will want to see that match. I want to see that match.
Hell yeah.
So I would like to see that. But other than that, I feel like once you're on the independents or you're in that kind of position, the dream match people are going to talk about is going to be Kenny Omega, right?
Yeah.
Which, again, my own personal feelings for All Elite Wrestling aside, I wouldn't be that jazzed about. I mean, I'm sure it would be a fine match, but it wouldn't excite me the way that Bryan versus Joe would or Bryan versus Punk would.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly a possibility. But like I said, I don't imagine that match happening on All Elite Wrestling. And if it doesn't happen there, then I can't imagine it happening anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, who else would Daniel Bryan want to face? I mean, if he's got the freedom to go out and fight whatever he wants or whoever he wants, who would he pick? Because like it or not, the WWE happen to have contracted an awful lot of good wrestlers.
Exactly. And there's most of the independent scene, or the big stars in the independent scene, contracted to, the other big promotions in wrestling as well. So there's not really what I'd say a huge amount of like big name talent in the independent scene now compared to a few years ago. It's hard to kind of put your finger on one name that stands out.
Don't you find that really interesting, dude? Now that we're spitballing that, because if you look back at the independents, you can usually tell who the big deals are. Because if you go back and look, after the Attitude Era, the big deals were Samoa Joe, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk,
AJ Styles.
AJ Styles, and then you had a couple other guys, right, around that time. Austin Aries, for example, right, who we had talked about. And then not so long after that was Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen and El Generico, right?
Yeah.
So there was a while where like you knew who the next kind of big deal was going to be. And then recently, I don't know who that guy would be, Even a while ago, you could say that when Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks were doing their thing, that was the same time that like Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly and stuff were starting to, be the big things in independent wrestling, right?
Yeah.
But now I don't know who you would pick.
No.
I have no idea who the fucking, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Will Ospreay or what do you call him? Zack Sabre Jr.?
Yeah, but I mean, they've kind of both been around for so long that they're just part of the furniture now.
Exactly. Like I feel like there hasn't been a weave recently of like guys to fucking watch. MJF maybe?
Maybe, but even then, he got snapped up by AEW really quickly and quickly established himself there as well. So
who knows? Hey, what about Daniel Bryan versus Nick Aldis for the NWA Championship?
Well, that could be interesting right there.
Wouldn't it just? Hello, those two guys can work.
And I think Daniel Bryan never held the NWA World Heavyweight title as well. So that could be a championship that he might be interested in adding to his collection.
Also, because Nick Aldis has been on such a tear right now, who else could beat him?
Yeah.
Totally makes sense that a guy like Daniel Bryan could come in and score that victory, So that's I would like that. I think that actually that would be really, really cool. And that would do a lot for the NWA.
Oh, absolutely.
They need a guy like that. They need a Daniel Bryan in their corner. And it could, because, they're just doing some wrestling. I think that would actually, now that we think about it, that would actually appeal to him a lot. Because it's kind of low key, but he also he'll have more freedom to kind of goof around and stuff,
Yeah.
To just like do what he does. I think that or Ring of Honor would be his kind of crowd. I would love to see him in NWA. I think that'd be pretty sweet. Let me throw something outside to you real quick. Daniel Bryan is married to Brie Bella.
That's correct.
The Bellas at WrestleMania made it seem like they were going to do some kind of comeback, which of course never got followed up on. However, it seems pretty likely. I wouldn't bet your house on it or anything, but it seems pretty likely that the Bellas are going to come back for some kind of thing.
No doubt to win the women's tag team titles at some point.
Right, which at the moment, you're like, at least they're a team. So, fair enough. Do you think Daniel Bryan would like to stay on a little... If doesn't it seem strange that Daniel Bryan would bow out just about the time that his wife came back?
Well, not necessarily, because they do have 2 young kids at home. So, maybe, Brie Bella has been sort of the stay-at-home mom for the last 3-4 years, whatever it is. And Daniel Bryan's been, going off to work every week. So it wouldn't be impossible for Daniel Bryan to stay at home and look after the kids while Brie and Nikki go off and return to WWE.
Possibly. I don't know. I feel like you could probably do something with the 2 of them on screen, but I don't know what they would do. I mean, realistically, I do know what they would do. They would do some kind of stupid bullshit comedy segment. 'Cause if you don't know what else to do one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, that also raises the point of if Daniel Bryan did leave WWE to go home to look after his kids while Brie Bella is in WWE, doesn't that make it kind of unlikely that he would go on to the independents? Maybe he's got kids to look after.
Well, yeah, it makes it tricky, definitely.
He could bring the kids with him.
Why not?
He could wrestle with like one of those little like BB straps around his back, you know. How old are the kids? Are they like? Because if they can sit in a chair, they can just sit up front row.
I think his daughter is about coming up to 4 years old, whereas his son was born last summer. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He
yeah,
might be a little tricky, but the girl could just be the timekeeper.
she could be his new tag team partner.
Listen, man, he could do that. Daniel Bryan could do that. He could have a tag match with a little girl as his tag team partner, and he would make it look good.
Yeah.
Braun Strowman. That's how you do it. So, in all honesty, what do you think is going to happen to Daniel Bryan?
Well, considering all the options we've talked about, I think it's most likely he's gonna lose this match on Friday, and probably that'll be his last WWE appearance for a while at least. I'd say, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back for a Hall of Fame induction at some point, but in terms of wrestling there full time, it doesn't seem like it's on the cards considering the things he's come out and said. So I think he's probably going to end up at another promotion sooner or later, whether it's Ring of Honor, like you say, returning home, or if he feels like he's been there, done that, and wants a new challenge in Impact or AEW. Who knows? But I think that's the most likely option.
Okay. See, this is interesting now because neither of us actually know what's going to happen until it happens, which will be after this podcast. I don't think he's going to leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is really interesting. I think that it's an angle on SmackDown, and he'll take some time off, and maybe take some time to think about stuff. But I don't think he's going to leave.
Okay.
Because I don't see. But again, I seem to be in the majority or the minority for this. But I don't see the benefit of Daniel Bryan going to work for Impact or All Elite Wrestling, because it doesn't impact them so much as it does the company. The company will benefit from it, and Daniel Bryan will benefit because he'll get a big paycheck from it. But he doesn't need that paycheck, and I can't see a whole lot of people in either company that he'd want to wrestle that badly. Like, I could see him maybe going to Ring of Honor, but I think right now, so like, okay, you think by the end of the year, Daniel Bryan will be working for another company?
Yes, that's my prediction.
Okay, well, mine is the opposite. I think by the end of the year, Daniel Bryan will still be working for the WWE. That's my bold prediction, and the rest of the year is what 6, 7, 8 months away.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, we'll probably find out the answer to this in like 5 days. So we've made a giant prediction that one of us is probably going to be wrong about, and we're about to find out. We're going to have to live with it. But I don't see it, man. I can't. Like, I can see him wanting to leave the WWE, but I just don't see why he would want to join those other companies,
I think for me, it probably comes down to just him wanting to work with new people and being somewhere different and outside of the WWE for the first time in a decade, because he's just been there and part of that for so long, and he's succeeded and obviously achieved so much as well and been so popular, but you just kind of get tired of being in the same place and not really feeling like you're going anywhere. So I think that's probably the most enticing thing for him, is to just see what else is out there and test those waters.
So you're still pretty set on him retiring from the WWE, but not retiring.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's the thing in wrestling. Retirements are never legit.
No.
Except CM Punk.
So
Fair play to
far.
him. AJ Lee as well. The two of them. They're both incredibly smart.
Yes.
That's the trick with those two guys. Smart people who save their money. And also are very good at making money in non-wrestling related organizations. That's also a big plus. I still think there's part of what he said, part of what Daniel Bryan said about not being inspired by WrestleMania. I think part of that might be about wrestling itself. The thing that he has that neither you and me have is that we haven't spent our entire lives doing the thing that we love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I would love to be in a band, for example, and tour around the world. But if you did that for 20 years, on year 21, what's going to really inspire you to keep doing that? Because you've done it, and you've done it well, and you've done it for a long time. And the money's nice, but you don't need the money. I think that there's a little part of Daniel Bryan that whenever he said those comments about WrestleMania, that he meant wrestling itself. And I feel like if you want a life after in-ring action in wrestling, the WWE is the place for that, because he can train at the Performance Center, he can be a producer, he can agent, he can be a commentator, he can work with William Regal in NXT. There's so much stuff he could do if they didn't want him to wrestle, and he didn't want to wrestle. Like, the most logical place for him to be, to continue to be part of the wrestling business without wrestling, is the WWE.
Yeah.
So I think that when you factor all that stuff in, plus, like you said, in NXT there are still plenty of people he hasn't faced. So if he does still get the itch to wrestle, and he wants to do it against somebody he's never wrestled before, he could do that in NXT and still get paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think he's going to leave the WWE. I don't think he's going to retire just yet. But, people's opinions on that stuff change all the time.
Yeah.
You could say, I'm never going to retire. I love this business. And then something could happen. You'd be like, fuck this. And that's just the way it is. It's unavoidable. So I don't know. I gotta say, dude, I don't know. Is this all just one big work?
I mean, it could be.
Is Daniel Bryan really the best wrestler in the world by getting us to talk about this stuff when it's all just a big work? You know what I mean? It's possible.
It'd be really impressive if it was.
There was something that happened not so long ago, and I don't remember what it was. And I was thinking, if this is a work, this is the best thing that's ever done. This is perfect. If they were just, I don't think it was a work in it. I don't even remember what it was. Probably some kind of big scandal. But I'm like, people don't do that kind of stuff anymore. Except the WWE. Now, let me explain myself. We know that the WWE have a habit of putting on a lot of shit, but every so often hitting a home run, right?
Yeah.
I think what they're really good at sometimes at doing at hitting a home run is remembering that kayfabe does exist. And sometimes they'll hit you with something that's so like, ooh, I don't know. You know what I mean? That only they could do. And it still reminds you why you watch wrestling, because you're like, I don't know. I really don't know. And we even covered that earlier today. This whole thing with Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan. If it was anybody else, you'd say, well, obviously this is an angle and Roman Reigns is going to win. But with Daniel Bryan involved, you don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It would be nice if it was a work, because I think deep down that's what wrestling fans really want. They want to be worked. Because that's the point. Because we all think we know the business too well. We're all really smart. And so when something happens that we don't see coming, if it's done like again, it has to be done really well. They can't just do something unusual, you know. For example, ink coming out of Alexa Bliss's face, right? We're not gonna go, wow, that's so unusual. You got us with that one. Like that's not the kind of work I'm talking about.
No.
But if they can do something that really, like Edge coming back,
exactly.
They got us with that, and he kept going.
Mm-hmm.
Like son of a bitch, man, he can go. Like stuff like that, and the WWE, when they want to, they can do that shit really well. The problem is they don't do it all as much as they should do. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like I've said that like a billion times in this show.
Well, yeah, but we don't know. That's the thing, and part of the finding out is what makes us come back to wrestling time after time. So, chances are we're going to get disappointed again, like we do like 90% of the time. But
yep,
it's that 10% though. That's what keeps us coming back.
That's exactly what we're talking about, dude. Sometimes, a lot of the time, the WWE fuck it up, but on the times when they don't fuck it up, they hit it so well that it keeps you interested. So I don't know. Right now, this Roman Reigns storyline has been pretty interesting, but this Daniel Bryan stuff has kind of come in and been really interesting as well. It's a very interesting twist in the tail. I mean, if Roman Reigns is the guy to quote unquote retire or banish, I should say, to banish Daniel Bryan, that would be big news and lots of heat for Reigns. But doesn't that seem more like a pay-per-view match?
Yeah, this is why I'm a bit confused why they've kind of rushed into this stipulation. Like, this is the only reason why I can't get my head around it being anything other than legit that he's about to leave WWE than the fact that this is being rushed out like 2 weeks after WrestleMania, not even being saved for WrestleMania Backlash.
Why is it called WrestleMania Backlash?
God knows.
Is it the backlash to what happened at WrestleMania? Because WrestleMania was already 2 days long.
They're going to name like every other pay-per-view, like WrestleMania Money in the Bank and WrestleMania SummerSlam now
but like
well.
you can see, you get the joke with WrestleMania Backlash. You know what I mean? It's like the backlash from WrestleMania.
Yeah, but it's just so unnecessary.
It's not good. Oh God, I will admit that it's not good. But I don't know, man. I mean, again, you raise a good point. Like, why would they do it on SmackDown if they couldn't just wait 2 weeks to do it at Backlash? But again, are they working us? I hope so. Tricky stuff, man. Real tricky stuff. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I don't know.
Indeed.
I feel like we're just going to have to tune in and check out for ourselves. I feel like that's the only option. Is there anything else you want to say about Daniel Bryan and his possible impending retirement? Or banishment?
Banishment, yeah. Not really. I mean, it would be sad if this was like an absolute end to his career, because obviously you've just enjoyed his work so much over the last 20 years, whether in Ring of Honor or WWE. But hopefully that's not going to be the case, and one way or the other, we'll still be able to see him wrestle for many years to come.
Hopefully. And here's what we're going to do. Like we said, we don't know which one of us is going to be right about our predictions. We'll soon find out. So if it turns out that Daniel Bryan does retire for good, what we're going to do in the future is do an episode of the show where we talk about Daniel Bryan and some of his matches. We'll go back and find some matches that you got to check out. You know that I think I seen Daniel Bryan versus, he was Bryan Danielson at the time, against AJ Styles for the Ring of Honor Championship, I believe it was, in, I want to say 2005.
Yeah, I think that checks out.
It is incredible. I watched that match, and there's very few matches where you get so drawn into it that you actually think it's a fight. And I just was watching this and thinking, boy, those guys really want to beat each other up. Which is exactly what you want from a wrestling match. And I'm like, it's incredible. It's so, and that was in 2005.
But
right?
that's when he was really hitting his stride as a wrestler as well. Like he had a whole series of matches with, like Nigel McGuinness. He had a fantastic match with Kenta at Ring of Honor as well. There's no shortage of amazing matches from that world title run that he had back then.
But that's what I mean. He's wrestled everywhere. He's had so many good matches. So what we'll do is, if he does retire, we'll talk about some of those matches and even the ones with Punk in WWE and all the other fucking good matches he's had in the WWE. He's had plenty. So what we'll do is we'll kind of chronicle some of the must-watch matches for Daniel Bryan if he retires.
But only if.
Only if he retires. It could be he's a robot and he will just never retire. He'll just continue to outwork people. But we'll have to see. So what we're gonna do is we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll probably know more information next week, and we'll be back at some point with another Daniel Bryan update. I think it's fair to say. But that kind of wraps things up for this episode. If you liked it, give us a little thumbs up and subscribe, and tell your friends on YouTube. That really helps us. And we're gonna be back next week with another excellent show. Who knows what it'll be about? Maybe about Daniel Bryan. Maybe about something else wrestling related that doesn't make any sense. That's a possibility too. There's only one way to find out, by sticking around and checking it out. So we will see you in the next episode. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.